a European country that firmly opposes Europe itself. Most countries have collectively turned their backs on Russia, but a country that still cooperates with Moscow and maintains contact with Vladimir Putin still lies cheap oil when opportunities are. But strangely, this country remains a member of the European Union, still relies on NATO and receives aid. Economic recovery funds come from the West. Hungary is such a country. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban once stated that Budapest is almost the only location in Europe today that can host such a meeting, thanks to Hungary's firm stance in promoting peace. Many assessments suggest that a European country being able to engage with both Russia and the US is rare. The US is satisfied with Hungary, but the EU is concerned because his position contradicts the bloc here. What surprised the world more was that President Trump himself chose the capital Budapest as the venue for the Russia-US summit. This development makes Kiev's allies in Europe unlikely to be pleased, as Brussels is once again largely sidelined by Washington in the Ukraine peace process. Hungary commits to ensuring President Putin can enter and successfully negotiate with his American counterpart. Despite the ICC arrest warrant, Hungary's foreign minister stated at a press conference on October 17 that Hungary accepts Russian President Vladimir Putin with respect and commits to ensuring he can enter Hungary, conduct successful negotiations, and return home. Hungary is a member of the International Criminal Court, ICC, which in March 2023 issued an arrest warrant for President Putin for allegedly illegally moving children from Ukraine to Russia, considering it a war crime. Hungary has declared its withdrawal from the ICC, but theoretically remains a member until June 2026. US President Donald Trump previously announced he would meet his Russian counterpart in Budapest within the next 2 aiming for a peace agreement in the Ukraine war. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has good relations with both Putin and Trump. Orban also strongly criticizes Western support for Ukraine. Prime Minister Orban and President Putin held a phone conversation on October 17 to discuss the upcoming US-Russia summit. Orban later announced that preparations were being urgently carried out. According to the Kremlin, the phone call took place at Orban's request. However, logistics for the Russian president's trip remain unclear, especially since the European Union closed its airspace to Russian-registered aircraft after the Ukraine conflict erupted in early 2022. The Kremlin previously stated that many issues need to be resolved before the summit. According to Prime Minister Orban, Budapest is currently the only place in Europe that can host, thanks to Hungary's firm stance on peace. Earlier this year, Hungary hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who also faces an ICC arrest warrant related to the war in the Gaza Strip. Orban hosting the Trump-Putin summit is causing EU concern, because he opposes providing weapons to Ukraine's EU accession efforts, and doesn't. Last July, Orban angered other EU leaders by visiting Kiev, Moscow, Beijing, and meeting with Trump, then a presidential candidate on what he described as a peace mission, just days after Hungary assumed the bloc's rotating presidency. Previously, after a phone call, President Trump announced he would meet his counterpart Putin in Hungary within the next 2 weeks. Mr. Trump assessed the phone call as very effective. Both sides agreed to send senior advisors to meet next week at a location to be decided later. Many people noticed that Hungary does not strongly support the West, even repeatedly vetoing or delaying aid packages for Ukraine, but has stepped up to host the Russia-US summit. However, people often overlook the detail that Hungary has quite good relations with the US. Few European countries maintain such good relations with both Russia and the US. According to many assessments, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban believes the West, especially the EU, is imposing liberal values excessively and interfering in the internal politics of member countries. Orban understands that, in the eyes of Hungarian voters, the image of a prime minister who dares to say no is actually a plus. Hosting the Russia-US summit also shows that Budapest is currently one of the rare between Washington and Moscow within Europe. Prime Minister Viktor has long maintained a pragmatic stance, opposing the expansion of sanctions and calling for direct dialogue with the Kremlin. The phone call between the US and Russian leaders took place ahead of the meeting between President and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. President Zelensky assessed that the threat from Tomahawk missiles had made Russia agree to negotiate. Markova is quickly resuming dialogue upon hearing about the Tomahawk missiles. Zelensky expressed hope that the momentum from the Middle East peace agreement mediated by Mr. Trump would help end hostilities in Ukraine, and also stated he would meet with U.S. defense companies during his to discuss the possibility of providing additional air defense. This will be the second Russia-U.S. summit since Mr. Trump returned to the White House. After the meeting in Alaska last August, the relationship between the two leaders has experienced many ups and downs during this. After an initial period of rapprochement, the U.S. president grew increasingly disappointed with the Russia, especially when the summit in Alaska ended without an agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine. On October 18, Hungarian Prime Minister Orban explained the reason for choosing Budapest. He said the answer is very simple. Hungary is the only one in Europe standing for peace. The Hungarian leader emphasized that, unlike most other EU members, his country did not cut ties with Russia after the Ukraine conflict escalated in 2022. Hungary has never lectured anyone, never closed negotiation channels. That's hard to persuade someone if Europe doesn't. Orban, who often holds views contrary to the EU, has long criticized the bloc's hawkish stance for Russia. Recently, he launched a signature campaign in Hungary to protest the EU's war agenda, warning that continued support for Kiev risks leading to direct confrontation with Moscow. Cooperation instead of confrontation, mutual respect instead of discrimination. Brussels has isolated itself, but Hungary will continue to negotiate. According to observers, choosing Budapest to host the summit is the result of intertwined legal, security, and political strategic factors from both Moscow, Washington, and the Hungarian host. However, there is one issue up to now. The legal status of President Putin remains a major barrier. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Mr. Putin in March 20. This warrant prevents Putin from freely traveling to most European countries, which are ICC members and obligated to execute the arrest warrant under the revoked statute. The EU has closed its airspace to aircraft registered in the Russian Federation. Hungary also recognized this issue, so in May, the Hungarian parliament passed a decision to withdraw from the ICC. In theory, Hungary remains a member of the court until June 2006. But this decision has created a legal loophole for Putin by visiting the country. The European Union could create its own solution by granting special permission for Russian President Vladimir Putin's aircraft to fly through European airspace. But that has become an unprecedented legal and political test, putting the EU before a dilemma. Between aviation security laws and geopolitical interests in the context of the Ukraine conflict showing no signs of cooling down, some experts in the capital Budapest assess that Hungary remains technically bound by the Chicago Convention during the transition period. But the government of Prime Minister Orban clearly declared it does not recognize the right to arrest heads of state, considering it a violation of Hungary previously ignored an ICC arrest warrant when hosting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This precedent helps us better understand why Hungarian Foreign Minister, in October, committed that the country would welcome Mr. Putin with respect, without being bound by the ICC arrest warrant. For Mr. Putin, Budapest becomes the only safe destination in Europe, without worrying about the risk of arrest. Hungary is the only location in Europe sufficiently neutral to host the meeting. If Mr. Trump and his counterpart Putin reach an agreement, Budapest will ensure everything goes smoothly and without legal risks. From now on, the most logical route could be Laos, Kola, Black Sea, Turkey, Serbia, Hungary completely. However, this route extends over 3,000 kilometers, passing through the Black Sea region with significant NATO and Russian military activities, posing Another scenario is establishing a limited European corridor, if some countries like Austria, Slovakia, or Romania agree to allow Russian aircraft to pass through salt under strict supervision by Eurocontrol, the European Air Traffic Coordination Agency. Additionally, security is also a crucial factor. Budapest has a high-level protection system, with experience organizing major international conferences like the EU. According to the Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the city can deploy security forces of up to 10,000 people. Combined with the idea of choosing Budapest as the venue for the event was raised by President Trump and immediately agreed to by the Russian press. According to Reuters and Times, Mr. Trump proposed this location during the Mr. Trump emphasized that Budapest is a suitable place to see whether we can end the inglorious war between Russia and Ukraine. The agreement from Mr. Putin was confirmed by the Kremlin, with the reason that Hungary is a neutral point between the two sides. Mr. Trump was not acting on impulse. Since August, he has promoted the idea of hosting a three-party conference of the US, Russia, and Ukraine in Budapest, considering it an extension of the peace agreement. Budapest was initially considered for the first conference, but Alaska was later chosen. Now, with the increasingly complex situation of the Ukraine conflict, Mr. Trump seems to recognize Budapest as a strategic choice. Experts assess that Mr. Trump chose Budapest because this allows him to protect the image of a mediator, while leveraging his close relationship with Prime Minister Orban to serve as a bridge to Mr. Putin. This is a wise move but could complicate US-EU relations.
Like the journey? Subscribe and join the next expedition.